One man took off his hat. The other one wouldn't look him in the eye. By noon, the house felt too big, too empty, like every sound had been sucked out of the walls. 3 weeks later, the house wasn't theirs anymore. Uncle Ray stood in the living room with his arms crossed, boots still dusty from work, his jaw set like a locked door. He didn't shout. He didn't curse. That somehow made it worse. "I can't afford to keep you kids," he said flatly. "Food ain't free, heat ain't free, and I didn't sign up to raise 3 mouths that ain't mine." Ethan felt Noah stiffen beside him. Lily's fingers tightened in his hoodie sleeve. "But this is our house," Noah whispered. Ray snorted. "Was your parents' house. Now it's mine. Paperwork's done." Ethan's chest burned. He wanted to yell, wanted to punch something, wanted to beg. All of it tangled together inside him until he couldn't tell which feeling was which. "We'll work," Ethan said. "I can cut wood. I can hunt. I can—" Ray shook his head. "You're 16. You think that makes you a man? Winter's here. You kids will just slow me down." Lily started crying then. Quiet at first, the way she did when she was scared someone would hear her. Ray grabbed 3 backpacks and dropped them on the floor. "Take what you need. You've got an hour." That was it. No goodbye, no apology, just the scrape of boots on wood and the slam of a door. By noon, they were walking down the frozen dirt road with everything they owned on their backs. Ethan carried the heaviest bag. Inside were some clothes, a dented pot, and their dad's old fishing knife. Noah carried a smaller pack with blankets. Lily had a pink backpack with a broken zipper and a stuffed rabbit sticking out of it. The sky was the color of dirty cotton. Snow clouds were rolling in low and fast. "Where are we going?" Lily asked. Ethan didn't answer right away. "Somewhere safe," he said finally. He didn't know if that was true. He just knew he couldn't say, "I don't know." They cut through the trees instead of staying on the road. The woods were quieter. No houses, no people watching them pass like they were a sad parade. By nightfall, the wind came in sharp and mean. It sliced through Ethan's jacket like it wasn't even there. They found an old fallen log and crouched behind it. Ethan tried to start a fire, but the wood was damp and the matches were nearly gone. When one finally caught, it barely gave off any heat. They shared a can of cold beans. Noah shivered. Lily's lips were turning pale. Ethan wrapped them both in the blanket and pulled them close. He didn't sleep much. Every sound in the woods felt like danger. The next morning, snow covered their footprints. They walked deeper into the hills where the land rose into gray stone cliffs. Ethan remembered coming here once with his dad to fish a creek in summer. He remembered a dark opening in the rock, half hidden by brush. A cave. "Come on," he said. They found it just before noon. The entrance was wide and crooked, like the mouth of something asleep. Cold air breathed out of it. Inside it was darker, but the wind couldn't reach them. Noah wrinkled his nose. "It smells like rocks." Lily held Ethan's hand tighter. "Is it safe?" "I think so." They stepped inside. The cave went back farther than Ethan expected. The ground sloped down into a wide chamber. In the middle of it was a frozen pond, smooth as glass, stretching wall to wall. Light filtered in from a crack high above, turning the ice faintly blue. For a second, Ethan forgot how cold he was. "It's like a secret place," Lily whispered. They set up their small tent near the wall, where the rock curved inward and blocked the wind. Ethan stacked stones around it to keep it steady. He gathered branches from outside and built a fire pit from flat rocks. When the fire caught, the cave glowed orange. Shadows danced along the stone like slow-moving ghosts. That night, they ate the last of the bread. On the second day, people found them. 2 hunters came into the cave, boots crunching on ice. "Well, I'll be damned," one said. "Look at this." The other laughed. 3 cave kids." Ethan stood up. "We're not bothering anyone." "Ain't that the truth?" the man said. "You'll be dead by Christmas." They left, still laughing. Noah's face went red. "They think we're stupid." "They don't matter," Ethan said, but the words felt thin in his mouth. By the 3rd day, their food was gone. Ethan stood at the edge of the frozen pond, staring down at the ice. Beneath it, dark shapes moved slowly. Fish. His dad had taught him once how to fish through ice, back when things were normal. He knelt and slammed a rock down. The ice cracked. He hit it again and again. His hands went numb, his arms burned. Finally, a hole opened. He tied a line from a torn bootlace. He shaped a hook from a bent paperclip he'd found in his pocket. He used a scrap of jerky as bait. Noah and Lily knelt beside him, silent. The line twitched. Ethan pulled. A silver fish burst through the hole, flapping wildly on the ice. Lily screamed with joy. "Ethan, you did it!" Noah laughed for the first time in days. They roasted it over the fire, skin crackling, fat dripping into the flames. It wasn't much, but it was warm. It was real. That night, Ethan lay awake listening to the wind scream outside the cave. He thought about Uncle Ray's face, about the way the door had closed. He thought about his dad's voice telling him, "A man doesn't quit when things get hard." His chest hurt. But when Lily rolled over in her sleep and grabbed his sleeve, he didn't pull away. Tomorrow he would fish again. Tomorrow he would make the tent stronger. Tomorrow he would figure out how to keep them alive. Because no one else was going to do it for him. And somewhere deep in the frozen stone, in a cave nobody wanted, a 16-year-old boy decided he would not let winter win. Morning in the cave never came with sunlight the way it did outside. It came with cold. Ethan woke up with stiff fingers and a crick in his neck. The fire had burned down to gray ash sometime during the night, and the air felt sharp in his lungs. Noah was curled on one side of him, Lily on the other, both wrapped in the blanket like burritos. For a few seconds, Ethan just lay there listening to the distant wind howl beyond the cave entrance. It sounded like the world was angry about something. He carefully slid out from between them and stood up. His boots were still damp from yesterday. When he put them on, his toes protested. "Okay," he whispered to himself. "First job, fire." He crouched by the pit and struck a match. The flame wobbled, then caught. Soon the cave glowed faintly orange again. Noah stirred. "Is it morning?" "Sort of," Ethan said. "Cave morning." Lily sat up, rubbing her eyes. "I dreamed Mommy was cooking pancakes." Ethan swallowed. "That sounds like a good dream." They shared the last fish from the night before. It wasn't much, just a few bites each, but it warmed their stomachs and their spirits. Afterward, Ethan went outside to look for wood. The snow was deeper now, almost up to his knees in places. His breath came out in thick clouds. He dragged back dead branches, his shoulders burning with effort. Each trip felt heavier than the last. By the time he finished, his gloves were soaked through and his hands were raw. Noah helped stack the wood inside the cave. Lily lined up rocks near the fire pit like she was building a tiny wall. "Look," she said proudly, "our house has a fence now." Ethan smiled despite himself. By the second afternoon, the cave began to feel less like a hiding place and more like something they owned. They moved the tent farther back, where the ceiling dipped and blocked drafts. Ethan piled stones around the sides and laid branches over the top to make it sturdier. He used strips torn from an old shirt to tie the poles tighter. It still looked like something a desperate kid built in the woods, but it stood. That night, voices echoed from outside again. The hunters had returned, this time with another man. "Well, I'll be," one said. "Still here." Ethan stood between them and the tent. "We're fine." The third man laughed. "You think this is fine? You got food?" Ethan didn't answer. The man shook his head. "This winter's gonna kill you." Noah clenched his fists. Lily hid behind Ethan's leg. The men left, their laughter fading into the trees. When they were gone, Noah kicked a rock. "I hate them." Ethan stared at the cave wall. "So do I." But later, when Lily fell asleep, Noah whispered, "What if they're right?" Ethan didn't lie. "Then we proved them wrong." On the fourth day, the pond became their whole world. Ethan learned where the ice was thick and where it cracked easier. He learned how long he had to wait before the fish came close to the hole. He learned to feel the difference between the water pulling the line and a real bite. Noah watched closely, memorizing everything. By afternoon, Noah asked, "Can I try?" Ethan hesitated, then handed him the line. "Slow, don't jerk it." Noah held his breath. The line twitched. He pulled too hard and the hook came out empty. "Dang it." "Try again." The second time, he pulled up a fish almost as big as the first one Ethan had caught. Noah shouted so loud his voice bounced off the cave walls. "I did it! I did it!" Lily clapped like she was at a concert. They cooked the fish together. Lily sprinkled it with the last of the salt from their bag like she was a chef on TV. For a moment, it almost felt normal. But hunger had a way of sneaking back in. By the end of the week, Ethan noticed Noah's cheeks looked thinner. Lily's coat hung looser on her shoulders. They were surviving, barely. One night, the wind grew louder than it had been before. Snow blew straight into the cave entrance. The fire sputtered. Ethan dragged rocks to block the opening, stacking them until his arms shook. He hung the tarp behind them, tying it to a crack in the stone. It helped, a little. They huddled in the tent, listening to the storm rage. "Is the cave gonna fall?" Lily asked. Ethan wrapped an arm around her. "No, it's strong, stronger than the storm." He hoped he was right. The next morning, the world outside was buried. Snow filled the mouth of the cave halfway up. It took Ethan nearly an hour to dig a path through it. When he came back inside, his eyelashes were crusted with ice. That was dumb, Noah said. Yeah, Ethan agreed, but we need wood. That day, something changed. While gathering branches near the bluff, Ethan found an old piece of plywood, half buried under leaves and snow. It looked like it had fallen off a truck years ago. He dragged it back to the cave like it was treasure. With more branches and rope, he made a wall inside the cave, a small square space behind the tent. What's that? Lily asked. Our room, Ethan said, inside the cave. They built it slowly, a wooden frame, a roof made from bark and branches, a door made from the plywood. It wasn't pretty, but it kept the wind out. The first night inside it, the fire burned longer. The air felt warmer. Noah lay on his back and stared at the ceiling. It's like a cabin. Ethan nodded. A cave cabin. Days blurred together. Fish, fire, wood, sleep. Storms came and went. The hunters stopped visiting. Maybe they thought the kids were already dead. Ethan's hands became rough and cracked. His arms grew stronger. His face looked older in the reflection of the pond's ice. Noah stopped asking if they would die. Lily stopped crying at night. One evening after they finished eating, Noah said, You know, Uncle Ray wouldn't have done this. Ethan didn't answer. He would have quit. Ethan stared at the fire. Yeah. The cave popped and groaned as it cooled. Outside, winter pressed its face against the stone. Inside, 3 kids learned how to stand their ground. They weren't safe, they weren't warm, but they were still here. And that meant tomorrow could still happen. Winter didn't come all at once, it crept in. It came in the way the wind started sounding sharper at night, in the way the pond's ice grew thicker and harder to break, in the way Ethan's hands stopped hurting from cold and just went numb instead. By now the cave cabin had a shape, a real one. 4 walls made from branches and logs dragged in piece by piece, gaps stuffed with mud and dry grass. A low roof slanted toward the back of the cave so smoke could drift out instead of choking them. The plywood door squeaked when it opened, but it closed tight enough to block most of the wind. Inside, the air stayed just warm enough to breathe without shaking. It wasn't comfort, but it was survival. Ethan woke up before the others every morning. He learned to do things in the same order, like a routine his dad used to follow with the truck. Fire first, check the pond, then wood. He knelt by the hole in the ice and tapped it with a rock. Solid, thicker than yesterday. Great, he muttered. Breaking the ice took longer now. His shoulders burned as he swung the rock again and again until cracks spidered across the surface. When it finally gave way, icy water splashed up and soaked his sleeves. Noah came up behind him. Need help? Ethan shook his head. Not yet, but he handed Noah the line once the hole was clear. Noah was steadier now. He knew how to wait. The line twitched. Noah pulled. Nothing. He tried again. Nothing. The water stayed dark and still. Lily sat cross-legged near the fire, rocking her stuffed rabbit in her arms. Maybe they're sleeping. Ethan forced a smile. Fish don't sleep all winter, but they sure felt like they were hiding. They didn't catch anything that morning. They split the last piece of dried meat instead. By afternoon, the wind started howling again. Snow blew into the cave entrance in thin white snakes. Ethan dragged rocks over and hung the tarp behind them, just like before. Noah watched him. What if the fish are gone? Ethan didn't answer right away. They're not gone, he said finally. They're just harder to catch. That night, Lily woke up coughing. It wasn't loud. It was small and tight, like her chest didn't want to open all the way. Ethan sat up instantly. You okay? She nodded, but her face looked pale in the firelight. Noah whispered, She feels hot. Ethan touched Lily's forehead. Warm. Too warm. Fear crawled up his spine. They had no medicine, no phone, no town. Just fire, fish, and each other. He wrapped her in every blanket they had and held her close until the coughing eased. In the dark, Ethan stared at the cave wall and thought about Uncle Ray's house, about a kitchen with heat, about a bed with real sheets. He hated himself for thinking about it. The next morning, Lily couldn't get up right away. I'm tired, she said. Ethan forced himself to stay calm. You rest. Me and Noah got this. Outside, snow was falling so thick it erased the trees. Ethan and Noah worked silently, breaking ice, dropping the line, waiting. Minutes passed, then more. Noah's hands shook. What if... The line jerked. Hard. Ethan grabbed it and pulled. A fish burst through the hole, silver and fighting. Noah laughed out loud. Yes. They cooked it slowly and fed Lily the softest pieces. Color came back into her cheeks. That night she smiled for the first time in days. Winter didn't care. It came in the form of storms that trapped them inside for 2 days straight. It came in the way the wind found new cracks in their walls. It came in the way their food stayed just barely enough. One afternoon, voices echoed outside again. The hunters were back. They didn't come in this time. They stood near the entrance. "You still alive in there?" one called. Ethan stepped forward. "We're fine." There was a pause, then laughter. "Crazy kids," another voice said. "Living like animals." Ethan clenched his fists. Noah stepped beside him. Lily stayed behind the door. The men left, boots crunching in snow. Noah's voice shook. "Why do they keep coming?" "Because they don't believe us," Ethan said. "And because it makes them feel better." "Better than what?" "Better than thinking about what would happen if they were in our place." That night, the wind picked up again. Stronger than before. Snow pressed against the entrance until the tarp bowed inward. Then came the sound. A deep crack. Not ice, stone. The cave shuddered. Lily screamed. Ethan ran to the door and threw it open. A pile of rocks had fallen near the entrance. Not enough to crush them, but enough to block part of the opening. Snow rushed in. Cold rushed in. "Back!" Ethan shouted. "Inside!" They slammed the door shut and shoved furniture against it. Dust filled the air. The fire sputtered. For a moment, it felt like the cave was breathing in and out, like it might collapse around them. They huddled together, faces covered with cloth, waiting. Minutes passed, then more. Finally, the rumbling stopped. Silence came back. Ethan opened the door carefully. The entrance looked different now, half blocked by fallen stone. The tarp was torn, but something else was different too. Less wind came through. Noah stared. "It kind of helped." Ethan nodded slowly. "Yeah, it did." They spent the rest of the day fixing the barrier, using the fallen rocks as a wall, hanging the tarp behind it. It wasn't perfect, but it was stronger. That night, Lily slept without coughing. By the end of the month, they were thinner, dirtier, tougher. Ethan's hands were split and scarred. Noah's voice was deeper. Lily could start the fire by herself. They didn't talk about Uncle Ray anymore. They talked about tomorrow. One evening, while the fire popped and cracked, Noah said, "You know, people in town probably think we're dead." Ethan shrugged. "Let them." Lily looked up. "Are we going to stay here forever?" Ethan stared at the pond's dark surface. "No," he said, "just long enough." "For what?" "For winter to give up." Outside, snow kept falling. Inside, 3 kids kept living. And every morning they woke up, still breathing, felt like something winter hadn't managed to steal. By midwinter, the cave didn't feel empty anymore. It felt busy. Every corner held something Ethan had touched. Stacked firewood, drying fish hung on strings. A row of rocks Lily had lined up like decorations. A crooked shelf Noah built from driftwood and rope. The small cabin inside the cave creaked when the temperature dropped, but it held. Ethan woke before dawn and lay still for a moment, listening. No coughing, no wind screaming through the walls, no sudden cracks from the ceiling. That counted as a good morning. He slipped out of the blankets and crouched by the fire pit. The coals were still warm. He added twigs and breathed life back into the flame. Orange light spread across the stone like a sunrise that had forgotten the sky. Noah sat up. "Fish day? Every day's fish day," Ethan said. They had learned to waste nothing. Bones became tools. Skin became strips for tying things together. The head went into the pot for broth. Even the smallest scraps got saved for bait. Outside the cave, the world stayed locked in white. But inside, time had started moving again. They had routines now. Noah gathered kindling and kept the fire fed. Lily cleaned the cabin floor with a bundle of twigs and sang while she worked. Ethan went to the pond, chipped away ice, and fished until his arms shook. He noticed his reflection in the frozen water one morning. His face looked sharper, older. His hair had grown uneven, and his eyes had a tired look that didn't match 16 years. He didn't look like a kid anymore. One afternoon, while hauling wood back into the cave, Ethan found something half buried in snow near the bluff. A rusted metal box. He pried it open with a rock. Inside were nails, bent but usable, and a broken handsaw with teeth still sharp enough to bite. He laughed out loud. Noah ran over. "What?" "Gold," Ethan said, holding it up. "Cave gold." With the saw and nails, the cabin changed fast. The door stopped sagging. The roof stopped leaking melted snow. The walls grew tighter, stronger. They made a second shelf. A real one. They built a bench to sit on instead of the ground. They made a rack for drying fish near the fire. "It looks like a house," Lily said one night. "It is a house," Ethan answered. "Just a weird one." The hunters came again. This time, they stood quietly near the entrance. One of them said, "You kids still alive?" Ethan nodded. The man scratched his beard. Damn. They left without laughing. That night, Noah said, they don't sound happy anymore. They don't like being wrong, Ethan said. Food stayed tight. Some days they caught 3 fish. Some days only 1. Some days none. On those days they ate broth and whatever roots Ethan could dig from under the snow. Lily started losing baby teeth. She held one up proudly. I'm growing up. Ethan smiled, but his chest hurt. Growing up in a cave wasn't how it was supposed to happen. One storm hit so hard the cave went dark at noon. Snow sealed the entrance almost completely. The air felt heavy. They stayed inside for 2 days straight. Lily played games with pebbles. Noah sharpened sticks into spears just in case they ever needed them. Ethan checked the walls again and again. When the storm finally passed, they dug their way out like animals from a den. The sky was blue again. And something else had changed. Water dripped from the cave ceiling. Slow, steady. Ethan watched it fall into the pond and spread in tiny circles. Is that bad? Lily asked. No, he said. That's different. A few days later, the ice near the edges of the pond grew thin. The fish moved closer to the surface. Ethan could see them without breaking the ice as much. Noah noticed green shoots pushing up through snow near the bluff. Look, he said, the ground's waking up. But winter wasn't done yet. One morning, Ethan went out alone to check a snare he'd set near the trees. He didn't see the thin crust of ice over the snow. It cracked under his weight. His legs sank into freezing water. Pain shot up his calf like fire. He fell forward, catching himself on a rock. For a second, all he could think was, if I can't walk, we're done. He pulled himself free and limped back to the cave, teeth chattering. Noah's eyes went wide. What happened? I slipped, Ethan said. It's fine. It wasn't. By nightfall, his ankle was swollen and stiff. Lily touched it gently. Does it hurt? Just a little. That was a lie. For 2 days, Noah did the fishing. Lily brought wood to the fire. Ethan stayed near the cabin, carving hooks from bone and tying new lines. He hated sitting still. He hated feeling weak. He hated how quiet the cave felt when he couldn't work. On the 3rd day, the swelling went down. On the 4th, he stood again. Don't be stupid, Noah said. Ethan grinned. Too late. The hunters came back once more, but this time they didn't mock. One of them tossed a small sack near the entrance. Inside was salt. Fish needs seasoning, the man said. Don't freeze out here. They left before Ethan could say thank you. That night, they ate fish with salt and laughed about how fancy it tasted. Spring came quietly. Not with flowers, not with birds, but with mud. Snow melted into brown water that ran down the cave walls. The pond lost its ice completely. The fish swam freely again. Ethan stood at the entrance and felt warm air on his face for the first time in months. Noah kicked at a puddle. We made it. Lily spun in a circle. We beat winter. Ethan didn't say anything. He just stood there and breathed. That night, they sat by the fire and listened to water dripping into the pond. No storm, no howling wind, just quiet. Noah said, you know what? What? Ethan asked. You're like the house? Ethan frowned. What does that mean? You hold everything up. Lily nodded. You keep us from falling. Ethan stared into the fire. He thought about Uncle Ray, about the road they'd walked away from, about the cave that had become their world. He didn't feel like a hero. He felt tired. But for the first time since that morning with the sheriff's truck, he didn't feel afraid of tomorrow. Outside, the snow kept melting. Inside, 3 kids sat in a house built from stone and stubbornness. And winter at last was running out of ways to hurt them. Spring didn't arrive like a celebration. It arrived like a question. The snow pulled back from the mouth of the cave in slow, uneven patches. Mud replaced ice. The air smelled different, wet, sharp, and alive. For the first time in months, the wind didn't cut through Ethan's jacket like a blade. It just felt cool. Ethan stood at the entrance and watched the forest change colors. Noah came up beside him. Does this mean we're done hiding? Ethan didn't answer right away. He wasn't sure what done looked like anymore. Inside the cave, Lily was lining up stones again, making little roads across the floor. She had started doing that whenever she felt restless. Are we leaving? She asked. Not yet, Ethan said. We still got food. We're safe here. But the truth pressed on him harder each day. They couldn't stay forever. The fish were easier to catch now that the pond wasn't frozen. Ethan could see them clearly, dark shapes moving through clear water. He started smoking the extra fish on a rack near the fire, building a small stockpile. Noah learned how to set snares properly. He caught a rabbit one morning and held it up like a trophy. I didn't think I could do it, he said. You did, Ethan told him. That's what matters. They ate better than they had all winter. Lily's cheeks filled out again. Noah laughed more. Even Ethan felt his bones stop aching from cold. That was when the voices came back. Not hunters this time. Different voices, younger, curious. Ethan heard them while gathering wood outside the cave. He froze when he recognized the sound of boots on rock. Two boys stood near the trees. One pointed toward the cave. "That's the place, I swear." Ethan stepped out into the open. The boys jumped. "Whoa," one said. "Didn't know anyone lived here." Ethan's shoulders stiffened. "We do." "You the cave kid?" the other asked. Ethan felt heat rise in his face. "What?" "My uncle said there were kids living up here all winter," the boy said. Didn't believe him. Noah came up behind Ethan. Lily peeked out from the cave. The boys stared. "You guys really stayed here?" one said. "All winter?" "Yes," Noah said before Ethan could stop him. "That's insane," the boy said. "My mom won't even let me camp one night." They left talking fast, voices excited. Ethan knew what that meant. People would come, and they did. At first, it was just a few curious locals, men from town who hunted or trapped. They stood near the entrance and stared like the cave was some kind of attraction. "You really lived in there? Just you three? How'd you eat?" Ethan answered, short and careful. He didn't like the way their eyes moved over Lily and Noah. Then one afternoon, Uncle Ray showed up. Ethan saw him first, walking stiffly up the slope like the hill itself didn't want him there. Lily grabbed Ethan's hand. "That's him." Noah stepped closer too. Uncle Ray stopped at the entrance. He looked older than Ethan remembered. Smaller. "So," he said, "you're still alive." Ethan didn't move. "Why are you here?" Ray looked at the cave, at the racks of fish, at the fire pit. "People in town been talking," he said. "Sheriff heard. Thought you might be dead." Noah's jaw tightened. "We weren't." Ray nodded slowly. "Guess not." Silence stretched. "You can come back now," Ray said. "Town's warming up. I got room." Ethan laughed once, sharp and bitter. "Now you got room." Ray's face hardened. "Don't get smart." "You kicked us out in winter," Ethan said. His voice shook, but he didn't stop. "You said we were a burden." Ray looked away. "I did what I had to." "So did I." Lily whispered. "We don't need him." Ray heard her. He sighed. "You don't belong in a cave." Ethan stepped forward. "We belong where we don't freeze." Ray stood there a moment longer, then turned and walked away without looking back. After that, more people came. Some brought questions. Some brought food. A woman from town left a sack of flour at the entrance without saying a word. A man brought an old blanket. Someone left a box of canned soup. Ethan didn't trust it at first. He checked every can, smelled the flour, counted everything. Noah asked, "Why are they helping now?" Ethan watched the road below. "Because now they can see us." Spring pushed harder. Green crept into the forest. The creek down the slope ran loud and full. Birds returned like they had never left. Ethan started walking farther from the cave, scouting paths. He found a trail that led toward town. Found a meadow where the snow melted first. He stood there one afternoon, feeling the sun on his face, and realized something scared him more than winter ever had. Going back, inside the cave that night, Noah asked, "What happens when summer comes?" Ethan stared at the fire. "We'll have to go down." "To town?" "Yeah. What if they send us back to Uncle Ray?" "They won't." "Huh? How do you know?" Ethan swallowed. "Because I won't let them." A week later, the sheriff came. His truck couldn't make it up the slope, so he walked. He stood awkwardly at the entrance, hat in hand. "Ethan Miller?" Ethan nodded. "You kids been through hell," the sheriff said. "Town's been looking for you. Didn't know where you went." "We weren't lost," Ethan said. The sheriff sighed. "That's not what it looked like." He looked around the cave, the racks of fish, the cabin walls. "You built all this?" Ethan nodded again. The sheriff rubbed his jaw. "You got grit, but this ain't how kids are supposed to live." Noah said, "We lived." The sheriff smiled sadly. "Yeah, you did." He explained about school, about foster care, about options. Lily grabbed Ethan's sleeve. "I don't want to go." Ethan put an arm around her. "We're not going tonight." The sheriff didn't argue. "I'll come back in a few days." When he left, the cave felt smaller. That night, no one slept well. Wind moved gently through the trees outside. The pond reflected the fire like a black mirror. "We did everything right," Noah said softly. "I know. Why does it still feel like we're losing something?" Ethan didn't have an answer. He went outside and sat on a rock overlooking the valley. Lights from town flickered faintly in the distance. All winter, the cave had been their world. Now the world was knocking. He thought about the first fish, the first fire, The night Lily stopped coughing, the day the cave stopped feeling like a prison, they hadn't just survived. They had become something. Strong, quiet, unbreakable in ways nobody could see. Behind him, the cave glowed warm and orange. Ahead of him, the town waited. And Ethan realized the hardest part of winter wasn't the cold. It was deciding when to leave what had saved you. The sheriff came back 3 days later. This time, he didn't come alone. Ethan saw the dust from the road before he saw the people. A second truck stopped below the slope, and 2 adults climbed out with the sheriff. A woman in a brown coat and a man carrying a clipboard. Lily grabbed Ethan's sleeve. "They brought more grown-ups." Noah muttered, "That's never good." The sheriff raised a hand when he saw them watching from the cave entrance. "Easy, kids. We just want to talk." Ethan stepped forward anyway, planting himself between the cave and his brother and sister. His shoulders were tense, like he expected to be pushed. The woman spoke first. "My name's Mrs. Keller. I work with Family Services." Ethan didn't answer. She glanced at the cabin walls, the racks of dried fish, the blackened stones of the fire pit. Her face changed. Not shocked, but heavy. "You really did live here all winter," she said quietly. "Yes," Ethan replied, "and we're still alive." The man with the clipboard cleared his throat. "That's not the point, son. The point is, you shouldn't have had to." Noah crossed his arms. "We didn't have a choice." The sheriff looked uncomfortable. "That's why we're here. Town's worried. You three just can't stay up here forever." Ethan felt his jaw tighten. "We're not hurting anyone." Mrs. Keller knelt down to Lily's level. "Sweetheart, don't you miss having a bed? Or school?" Lily shook her head hard. "I miss my mom and dad." No one spoke for a moment. The wind brushed the trees like it didn't care what they decided. "We can help you now," Mrs. Keller said. "There are families in town who—" "We don't need another uncle," Noah snapped. Mrs. Keller flinched slightly. "That's not what I meant." Ethan could feel everything slipping. The cave, the fire, the way they had learned to move without asking permission from anyone. He said, "You didn't come in winter." The sheriff sighed. "We didn't know." "You always say that," Ethan replied. "But we still froze." Noah's voice cracked. "We almost didn't make it." Mrs. Keller stood up slowly. "And that's exactly why we're here now." They didn't force them to leave, not yet. But they didn't leave either. They stayed long enough to walk inside the cave, to look at the sleeping area, to count the food, to see Lily's pile of rocks and Noah's carved sticks. "You built a home," the man with the clipboard said. Ethan nodded. "We had to." The sheriff rubbed his face. "You can stay a little longer, but we need a plan." That word stuck in Ethan's head. Plan. For months, the plan had been simple. Don't die. Now it had to be something else. That night, the fire felt smaller. Noah poked at it with a stick. "They're gonna take us." Ethan shook his head. "Not like Uncle Ray did." "How do you know?" "I just know." Lily whispered. "What if they split us up?" That hit harder than the cold ever had. Ethan pulled her close. "They won't. I won't let them." But when the cave went quiet, doubt crept in. What if he couldn't stop it? The next morning, Ethan went out alone. He climbed higher up the bluff than he ever had before, where the trees thinned and the wind blew clean. From there, he could see the town, just a smear of rooftops and roads far below. It looked small. So had the cave once. He thought about the first night they'd come here, about how afraid he'd been, about how the cave had turned from a hole in the rock into a place with walls and warmth and meaning. This wasn't just where they lived. It was where they became something. Strong, useful, together. When he came back, Noah was sharpening a hook and Lily was washing a pot in the creek water. "They're coming back tomorrow," Noah said. Ethan nodded. "I know." That evening, voices echoed again at the cave entrance. But this time, it wasn't officials. It was Uncle Ray. He stood awkwardly near the rocks, hands shoved into his coat pockets. Ethan felt anger rise up so fast it surprised him. "What do you want?" Ethan asked. Ray looked past him into the cave. "Sheriff told me you were still up here." "We are." "I can take you back now," Ray said. "House is warm." Noah stepped forward. "You said we were a burden?" Ray's jaw worked. "I was wrong." "You were scared, Ethan said. Ray didn't deny it. "I didn't think you'd live," he admitted. Silence stretched between them. "I can fix it," Ray said. "You come back. We pretend this didn't happen." Ethan laughed once, sharp and dry. "You can't pretend winter didn't happen." Ray looked down at the ground. "People are talking." Ethan's chest tightened. "They didn't talk when we left." Ray shifted his weight. "I'm offering." Ethan stepped closer. "We don't belong to you anymore." Ray's eyes flicked to Lily, to Noah. "You're still kids." Not the way you mean, Ethan said. Ray turned and walked away without another word. That night, Noah said, I don't want to go with him. We won't, Ethan replied. But we have to go somewhere, Lily whispered. The next day, the sheriff and Mrs. Keller came back. They brought bread, apples, a real blanket. Ethan watched Lily bite into the apple like it was something holy. Mrs. Keller said, there's a family in town willing to take all three of you together. Noah froze. Together? Yes, she said. Well, that's the rule. You don't get split. Ethan felt something twist inside him. Relief, fear, grief. And school? Noah asked. Yes. And the cave? Lily asked. Mrs. Keller hesitated. You can visit it. That night, they didn't sleep much. The fire burned low. The pond was quiet. Noah whispered, what if we forget how to live like this? Ethan stared at the roof they had built. We won't. Lily said, I don't want to forget. You won't, Ethan repeated. This place is in us now. They packed slowly the next morning. Not because there was much to take, but because everything felt heavy. The knife, the rope, the blanket that smelled like smoke. Ethan stood in the doorway of the cabin and touched the wall. Stone and wood and effort. Noah watched him. You okay? Ethan nodded. Just saying goodbye. They stepped outside together. The cave didn't look like a hole anymore. It looked like a shelter that had done its job. Down the slope, the sheriff waited. So did the road. And for the first time since winter began, Ethan felt something colder than snow. Not fear, not hunger, but the weight of leaving behind the place that had taught him who he was. The truck waited at the bottom of the slope like it didn't want to come any closer. Ethan led the way down, a pack on his back and the old fishing knife tucked into his belt. Noah followed with the blanket rolled tight under his arm. Lily held her stuffed rabbit and kept looking over her shoulder, like the cave might call her back if she stared long enough. They stopped halfway down. From there, they could see the entrance clearly. Dark stone framed by melting snow, the place where winter had tried and failed to take them. That's our house, Lily said softly. It was, Ethan corrected. Then after a second, it still is. Just not the kind you sleep in anymore. The sheriff waited with Mrs. Keller beside the truck. A woman and a man stood a little farther back, quiet, unsure, like they didn't want to scare anything away. Mrs. Keller said, Ethan, this is the Harris family. They've got a place in town. You'll have your own room, all of you. Noah looked at the man's boots. All of us? The woman nodded. Together, we promised. Ethan felt the word together settle in his chest like a warm stone. They climbed into the truck. As it rolled down the dirt road, the cave slipped behind trees and rock until it was gone. Noah pressed his forehead to the glass. It feels weird. Everything does, Ethan said. First days always do. Town looked smaller than Ethan remembered. The houses were close together. The roads were muddy. People stopped what they were doing to stare as the truck passed. Some faces looked guilty. Some looked curious. A few looked kind. At the Harris house, there was a porch and a door that closed all the way and didn't flap in the wind. Inside, the air smelled like bread and soap. Lily's eyes went wide. It's warm. Mrs. Harris smiled. It's yours for now. They didn't unpack much. There wasn't much to unpack. That night, Ethan lay on a bed that didn't touch stone. Noah whispered from the next mattress, I can't hear the wind. Lily said, I miss the fire sound. Ethan stared at the ceiling. Me too. Sleep came slow. Dreams came fast. He dreamed of the cave filling with light, of fish swimming through air, of winter knocking and finding no door. School started the next week. Ethan sat in the back of the classroom and felt every eye land on him. Someone whispered, That's him. Another voice said, The cave kid. The teacher said his name like it mattered. At lunch, a boy asked, Did you really live in a cave? Ethan nodded. The boy blinked. That's wild. Ethan didn't know how to explain that wild wasn't the word. Necessary was closer. Noah got in a fight the first day someone made fun of Lily's coat. The principal called Ethan in. Mrs. Keller showed up too. He's protective, she said gently. Ethan stood straight. So am I. They let Noah off with a warning. At home, Mrs. Harris set plates on the table and said, You don't have to hurry. Lily ate slow, like she didn't trust the food to stay. Spring kept moving. Grass grew where snow had been. The creek ran clear. The air smelled like dirt and new things. One Saturday, Ethan took Noah and Lily up the bluff. They walked the old path. The cave entrance looked smaller than he remembered. The tarp was gone. Stones still blocked part of the opening. Inside, the pond reflected the light from above. The cabin stood crooked but proud. Lily touched the wall. We made this. Noah said, "It still smells like smoke." Ethan nodded. "And fish." They sat on the bench they had built and listened. Drip, drip, drip. It sounded like time. "We're not coming back here to live," Ethan said, "but we can remember it." Noah looked at the hole in the pond where they used to fish. "I don't want to forget how to survive." Ethan put a hand on his shoulder. "You won't." That summer, things changed. Noah joined a baseball team and learned to swing without flinching. Lily learned to read and wrote her name on everything she owned. Ethan got a job at a hardware store and saved money in a jar labeled Next. Uncle Ray never came by again. Some people in town started nodding when Ethan passed. A few said, "You're the kid who—" He stopped them with a look. "I'm just a kid," he said, "who had a winter." One night, the Harris family grilled burgers in the backyard. Firelight rose into the warm air. Lily held her rabbit and said, "Do you think Winter remembers us?" Noah laughed. "Winter doesn't remember anything." Ethan watched the flames. "Maybe it does, but it didn't win." Mrs. Harris asked him, "Do you miss it?" "The cave," Ethan said. "Yes." He thought about the nights with no coughing, the mornings with fish, the sound of snow hitting stone. "I miss what we learned there," he said. "Not what it took to learn it." Later, when the stars came out, Ethan walked to the edge of the yard. He could see the dark line of the hills in the distance. Somewhere up there, stone held a memory of 3 kids who refused to disappear. He didn't feel small anymore. He felt shaped by cold, by fear, by stubborn love, and by a place that had no door but still taught him how to stand. Before going inside, he looked once more toward the hills. What do you think you would have done if you were 16 and responsible for 2 younger siblings in the dead of winter? Would you have trusted strangers or trusted yourself? Would you have left the cave when spring came or stayed where you learned how to survive? And if you had built a home with nothing but your hands and hope, could you walk away from it? Sometimes the hardest part of surviving isn't staying alive. It's knowing when it's time to step back into the world. If this story moved you, if you believe strength can come from the most unexpected places, and if you want to hear more stories about courage, family, and starting over, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us keep telling stories like Ethan's. Stories about finding light in the cold and building a future from almost nothing. Because somewhere out there, another winter is waiting, and someone is about to learn what they're made of.